Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. The first meeting of the China-US Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism was held in London, UK. After 2 days of negotiations, both sides announced a truce and returned to the consensus reached after last month's talks in Geneva. After 2 rounds of confrontation, has there actually been a winner? China's Ministry of Commerce stated that during 2 rounds of closed-door meetings totaling about 16 hours, both sides reached a principled agreement on implementing the important consensus from the June 5 phone call between the 2 heads of state and on a framework of measures to consolidate the outcomes of the Geneva economic and trade talks. New progress was also made in addressing each other's economic and trade concerns. In response to reporters' questions about the issue of rare earths, Ministry of Commerce spokesperson Herr Yaodong also stated that as a responsible major country, China fully takes into account the reasonable needs and concerns of various countries in the area of people's livelihoods. China reviews export license applications for rare earth-related items in accordance with laws and regulations, has already approved a certain number of compliant applications according to the law, and will continue to strengthen the approval process for compliant applications. According to a report by Bloomberg, although U.S. President Trump praised the outcome of the talks as a game-changing breakthrough, his team admitted that the latest framework for China-U.S. trade measures is essentially a confirmation of the terms from the Geneva talks, and many issues still remain unresolved. Tim Meyer, a professor of international trade law at Duke University School of Law, said that China may be in a more advantageous position in the future. Bloomberg reported that, in order to reach an agreement, the U.S. withdrew its previous restrictions on visas for Chinese students. Trump, who had been sharpening his stance, changed his tone on June 12 and said that the U.S. welcomes Chinese students to study in America, and that he supports Chinese students staying in the U.S. and being hired by American companies. In addition, this repeated back and forth has also exposed the U.S.'s heavy reliance on Chinese exports of rare earth magnets for its key industries. According to the report, Trump made it clear how important rare earth materials are to the U.S. He seemed even more eager than the Chinese side to get the negotiations back on track, and had been hoping to have a phone call with the Chinese side for months. Bloomberg especially pointed out that, more importantly, Trump's habit of frequently threatening with comprehensive tariffs and then backing down in the end has shown leaders of other countries what timid deal-making means, TACO, which stands for Trump always chickens out. Trump always chickens out. This phrase has already gone viral in the U.S. investment community and is widely used. Scott Kennedy, a China studies expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in the U.S., he said, "This is a Chinese version of TACO." The Chinese side saw Trump back down in previous cases, then carefully plan things out, betting that Trump would give in, and he really did. U.S. media reviewed the China-U.S. talks held in London this week, which were a continuation of last month's meeting in Geneva. During this period, Beijing expressed dissatisfaction and protested against several new discriminatory restrictions imposed by the Trump administration on China, including the U.S. issuing export control guidelines for AI chips, banning the sale of chip design software EDA to China, and announcing the revocation of Chinese student visas. Meanwhile, Washington was urgently seeking approval from China for rare earth exports. When the economic and trade negotiations between the 2 countries seemed to have stalled, the leaders of China and the U.S. had a phone call on the evening of June 5, once again pushing both sides to continue seeking solutions through negotiations. Reports pointed out that this week's joint statement between China and the U.S. is not the final result of a trade agreement between the 2 countries. It may lay the groundwork for reaching a broader agreement. This stands in stark contrast to Trump's previous tough talk about forcing China, which he claimed had taken advantage of the U.S. for years, to immediately give in. The New York-based research institute, China. Its CEO, Leland, who is also a member of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission under the U.S. Congress. Miller believes that the risk of flip-flopping will undermine Trump's ability to secure concessions in trade negotiations, especially when dealing with Beijing, and will also bring more challenges when he negotiates with other countries. Miller thinks that the U.S. keeps heating things up and then cooling them down, but returning to the starting point doesn't mean going back to zero. In fact, it's a net loss. During this period, America's credibility has already been eroded. U.S. media have noticed that the market reaction to the London negotiations was generally muted, which shows that investors have started to become indifferent to Trump's loud trade statements, and voters are also increasingly skeptical about Trump's trade agenda. A recent poll conducted by Quinnipiac University from June 5 to 9 shows that 57% of voters disapprove of the way Trump handles trade issues. In the latest round of the U.S.-China confrontation, the world's leading manufacturing companies have also witnessed China's unique advantage in rare earths. After the U.S.-China talks in London reached a consensus, a spokesperson from the Ministry of Commerce stated on June 12 that China has, in accordance with the law, approved a certain number of qualified rare earth export applications. As soon as this news came out, American companies that had been lamenting the rare earth situation for days could finally breathe a sigh of relief. On June 13, the American media outlet The Washington Post published an article saying that although uncertainties still remain, U.S. companies have welcomed this development. However, some analysts have also pointed out that China's rare earth magnet export licensing system is permanent, and China will not allow American clients to stockpile rare earths. NEO Corporation, a key U.S. critical minerals developer. CEO Mark Smith. Smith said he would be one of the happiest people if China actually started releasing some of its heavy rare earths and allowed them into the world economy. Because without these heavy rare earths, the world economy would come to a standstill. NEO Corp is currently developing a new mine in Nebraska to produce lithium, cadmium, titanium, and various rare earth elements. However, in a report, Verdu, managing director at U.S. consulting firm Tenniel, wrote that even so, rare earth supply disruptions will always remain a constant threat. He believes that the rare earth magnet export licensing system established by China is permanent. Verdu wrote that China may not approve enough exports to allow U.S. customers to stockpile, thereby ensuring that China's influence in this sector remains undiminished. China may not, or even simply will not, approve rare earth exports to U.S. defense companies and their suppliers. Rare earths are crucial for sectors like electric vehicles and nuclear submarines. For the past 30 years, China has consistently held a dominant position in rare earth mining and refining. According to data from the International Energy Agency, in 2023, China accounted for over 60% of the world's rare earth mineral production, but its control over the processing stage reached 92% of global output, giving it an almost monopolistic hold on global rare earth processing. The U.S. Geological Survey also stated that from 2020 to 2023, 70% of the United States rare earth compound and metal imports came from China. This April, after U.S. President Trump imposed extremely high tariffs on China, China quickly responded with countermeasures, including export controls on a range of critical minerals and rare earth magnets. Industry insiders have revealed that China is in the process of establishing an export licensing system. Reuters previously cited sources saying that, along with the introduction of export control policies, China has already implemented a tracking system for the rare earth magnet industry. Insiders have revealed that China's tracking system is already in effect, requiring manufacturers to submit additional information online, including transaction volumes and client names. As the impact of these controls becomes apparent, Western companies, including those in the U.S., have started to complain about a rare earth shortage, and some Western media continue to hype up the so-called weaponization of rare earths. Automakers around the world are worried that they might face possible production delays and disruptions. Previously, Ford Motor Company in the U.S. said that due to the rare earth shortage, they had to suspend production of one model at their Chicago plant for a week in May. Automotive companies and associations in Europe, Japan, and India have also warned that their industries have already suffered serious disruptions, and production stoppages are imminent. The Washington Post mentioned that MP Materials in California owns the only operating rare earth mine in the U.S. Previously, this company used to ship the heavy rare earth elements they mine to China for processing. However, after Trump started the U.S.-China tariff war, they were forced to stop doing so. Rekha Murthy, a rare earth analyst at U.S.-based Benchmark Venture Capital, previously predicted that most companies would only start experiencing rare earth shortages later this year, but from the current situation, some companies are already facing problems. Murthy said that while there is indeed inventory in the overall market, many original equipment manufacturers, especially car makers, don't seem to be prepared. Although some American companies have stockpiled inventory, if this situation continues, they might start to feel the pinch. He pointed out that it seems most of the inventory is still in China, so there is a bottleneck in rare earth supply. To sum up simply, first, after the US-China-London negotiations, Trump posted online claiming he won, trying to fool some ignorant American voters. Second, even the American media aren't buying it, which means the American elites all understand this is not a real victory at all. Third, rare earths are a trump card for China. In the foreseeable future, the US has no way to get around the rare earth predicament, and China won't fully open up either. Based on the information released afterwards, we can see a general outline. China's export of rare earths to the US is both time-limited and quantity-limited, just for half a year, and only enough for companies' normal use, not for stockpiling. In other words, China has set a 6-month time frame. The US needs to reach a comprehensive agreement with China within this period, or else there will be another supply cut. After 2 rounds of contact, it's already clear that the US is not in a position to go head-to-head with China. Fourth, the essence of this game still relies on strength as the backing. After Trump introduced reciprocal tariffs, only China managed to secure equal negotiations with the US. In fact, looking at China's development and its global influence, China has already come out on top. At the same time, this also shows that other countries don't have the same capabilities as China.